15. Specific buildings. Specialized use facility programming. Robert McClure United Church, Calgary, Alberta, 1986-87. A congregation directly assists designers in programming and design of its future church facility. Context. In September 1986, the building committee of the Robert McClure United Church expressed an interest in a participatory approach to the planning and design of a future church facility. The committee was anxious to harness the creative energies and ideas of the congregation as a way of sparking the level of enthusiasm desired to get the project underway. The committee felt that the meaningful involvement of the entire congregation, including the children as well as elders, would strengthen the members' sense of community as a family of faith. Cooperative effort would likewise be valuable in presenting a unified appearance to the United Church of Canada when the time came to appeal for funding and support. Getting the congregation involved. For the church, the co-design workshops were an exciting way to explore possibilities, sort objectives, and define priorities, a way to seek consensus among the 100 or more members of the growing congregation. The congregation undertook to organize the volunteer roles itself, and the first workshop took place on a crisp Sunday in December, immediately following the Sunday service in the school gymnasium in which the congregation worshipped. The event began with the children who were introduced to the problems and potentials of planning their own environment in a City on the Wall exercise. Following this, the activity listing took place in which the congregation members were asked to consider all of the various activities that they could see themselves engaged in over the course of a typical day in the life of the new church. Through this exercise in imagination, a complete profile of a day in the life of the church emerged, describing all of the various functions that the new building would be required to support. The site walk followed, with everyone piling into cars to visit the vacant spot of land nearby that was to be occupied by their new home. Groups of parishioners huddled over co-design artists who were taking notes and avidly discussing some of their ideas that they had long been considering until now within the confines of their imaginations. Some of the children scampered among the mounds of dirt on the site, imagining how their new playground might be arranged. The minister and the choir director debated about how to orient the choir rehearsal room to admit the morning sun. Some of the church ladies discussed how they might lay out the loading dock to make it convenient for people unloading food from their cars at the annual turkey supper. Each regarded the site in relation to a particular activity with which he or she was intimately familiar. The afternoon image workshop was abuzz with creative discussion and drawing as co-design artists and the congregation sought to define the ideal environments for the particular activities that had been profiled earlier in the activity listing. By the end of the afternoon, large and messy images of the life of the McClure congregation lined the walls of the gymnasium, describing environments for workshop, social activities, daycare, nursery school and other educational programs, administration and service, music rehearsal, and the kitchen. Workshop image. Source: Robert McClure United Church, Calgary, Alberta. Design of parts. Co-design facilitators described these various discrete images as parts, which now had to be combined into a whole. The parts were not yet a solution to the design problem, but rather a step in defining what the problem was and bringing the congregation closer to an understanding of the complexity of designing its place of worship. Over the next few weeks, co-design staff analyzed the drawings for messages they contained, looking first for the underlying patterns of activity composing each image. The analysts compiled a list of patterns for each activity as drawn from Christopher Alexander's A Pattern Language. These suggested other images that elaborated on the original workshop drawing. Immediately, recurring patterns and similar images began to appear among the drawing, suggesting the overlapping patterns of activity that interlocked to describe the life of the congregation. Storyboards were drawn that elaborated on particularly important stories in the life of the church: the wedding story, the minister's day, the Sunday school picnic, choir practice, and so on. These began to explore the links among the various activities, temporary and physically. Already the consequences of the congregation's statements in terms of architectural form and arrangement in plan were becoming apparent. In this way, the process combined programming and design. Additionally, the workshop drawings and word descriptions were analyzed for their implications about physical space requirements, spatial relationships, and adjacencies. In a more traditional programmatic way, information was quantified directly from the qualitative workshop material and restated in programmatic, technical, and architectural terms. The site walk. The setting for the new church is studied firsthand. Photo: John Mackenzie. Image workshop for a new church. Photo: John Mackenzie. Determining priorities. Returning to the congregation with the results of the studies, co-design staff asked the congregation members to review all of the drawings on a pre-numbered response sheet. They were asked to record their personal preference of priority for the pictured activity, as well as to comment on the space in which the activity occurs as drawn. A simplified rating scale, 1, 2, or 3, measured their priorities. This workshop session provided an opportunity to collect second thoughts, and many of the ideas from the first workshop could be amplified, clarified, or even rejected as the congregation was able to review all of the ideas at once and compare them. This involved active discussion and dialogue, prompting the debate and questioning of priorities among the congregation. Do we really need a separate kitchen for the daycare? Or it looks as if we can combine these two activities in the same room. So began the congregants' awareness into our exciting possibilities that lay before them. The important point is that they reached these conclusions themselves. Several points were observed about working with a well-defined group such as a church congregations. Perhaps more than any other user-client group, a congregation is able to reach a much higher level of accord in a much shorter time, perhaps due to the members' similarities in terms of value preferences, cultural associations, and social background. This does not mean that there are no internal conflicts or differences within such groups. Rather than focus on these differences, the co-design process helps them to focus on areas of accord and strengthening their internal sense of community. This had advantages for the congregation in presenting a unified front to the United Church of Canada when applying for financial assistance. Concept drawing for Robert McClure United Church. A. Section. B. Plan. 16. Working with children. Children design their own playground. Briar Hill Playground, Calgary, Alberta, May 1986. Both children and adults work with a diverse group of agencies, the school board, city planners, and politicians to make a better playground. Context: the Briar Hill Elementary School playground was the object of bureaucratic pragmatism. To control with wind-blown dust, the school board paved over the entire playground. Not unexpectedly, the cure was worse than the disease, and the community and school principal felt there must be a better solution. The community association was interested in playground improvements too. Funding became available as a kind of recompenses for having lost parkland through expansion of rapid transit. The association felt it would be wise to spend the money on playground improvements. It might well lift the spirits of the discouraged citizenry, which needed a positive victory after the bitter battle over lost park space. Added to this, the city planning department was developing a community plan to determine future needs, and any ideas generated during discussions about the playground would be welcomed. Co-design facilitators were engaged to hold a series of workshops with the school children and 2 public workshops, all focused on generating ideas for an improved playground. Conducted during the spring in a series of 45-minute periods, the program commenced with the drawing of the city on the wall. In the school gymnasium, 90 children are involved in an overcrowded, loud, and exciting drawing exercise that generated the development of a city. Realizing they had drawn a city they would not enjoy living in, the children focused on creating a playground that they would enjoy. The listing of activities for a renovated playground ended the first period. During the next session in the gym, the students selected activities they each wished to draw and returned to their classrooms for individual work. Drawings were in oil pastel on 20 by 30-inch paper. In the third period, students talked about their drawings to the co-design visitors and added words to explain the drawings further. Briar Hill Playground before improvement. Photo: Bill Latimer. Prior to improvements, this playground was entirely paved. Compare with the following figure. Photo: Merinda Conley. The students then selected the criteria for judging the drawings. All of the ideas were good and were rated as follows: 1. Go for it. 2. Needs more designing. 3. Looks too expensive. 4. Belongs somewhere else other than in the playground. The school children voted on their workshop drawings and rated the Flying Fox aerial cable ride as their top priority. They got their wish. Photo Bill Latimer. The scenes ranged from simple ideas of landscape to highly developed midways with Ferris wheels and video arcades. The most popular ideas were simple: a drinking fountain, grass, palms, and trees, and a flying fox cable ride. A water fountain was another of the children's top-rated requests. Photo Bill Latimer. Children's Workshop Image source Inglewood Community, Calgary, Alberta. Seven. Workshop image source Briar Hill School, Calgary, Alberta. Kids, Conflict and Consensus. The public workshops that followed were attended by adults and children who generated many differing and sometimes opposing views of what would be right for the playground. One group, for instance, produced a drawing showing active field sports in an area that another group set aside for passive play. Differences were resolved by taking all of the ideas generated and incorporating them into roughly designed parts. Co-design staff spent a week working on their own to organize the workshop images into related topics or parts. One part, for instance, was the parents' waiting and pickup area. Another was a children's open-air amphitheater. Where possible, these parts were given rough locations on the site, and their space requirements were shown by a bubble outline on a site plan. Some areas had overlapping or conflicting lines shown. No attempt was made to show a solution or scheme per se. At a follow-up workshop, the participants were invited back to evaluate these designs of parts and concepts generated by co-design staff. They voted on which parts they thought, in retrospect, to be most appropriate to the site. This went a long way toward eliminating potential conflicts of use for the site and generating a consensus view of what would be best. Workshop image source Briar Hill School, Calgary, Alberta. Other unique aspects. The Briar Hill workshop was unique in other ways as well. A construction budget was known ahead of time. Normally, in a co-design workshop, the actual budget is not yet approved. Interestingly, it did not seem to make much difference to the type or range of suggestions. No one felt restricted or constrained. A landscape architect volunteering her time was closely involved with the process all the way through. It was valuable to have her expert knowledge as a resource person. Results. Perhaps the greatest need in the community was not for a new playground, but for a boost in morale. The people were seeking, more than anything else, a sense of accomplishment and satisfaction. This was stated early on by the community association that hired co-design facilitators. They certainly got the boost in morale. All who participated came away from the workshops feeling encouraged, full of excitement, and ready to charge ahead with the final design and construction. They had a basic concept plan serving as a valuable reference point in proceeding with final design, financing, and construction. The concept plan is a useful tool in dealing with the many agencies involved in the actual playground improvements: the city, the school board, and the surrounding landowners. Finally, the concept plan contains the evaluation criteria against which the built outcome is compared to ensure that initial requirements have been met. The City of Calgary Board of Education and the Calgary Board of Parks and Recreation collaborated with the Briar Hill Community Association in the design and construction of the new park. The only variation to the children's wishes was a change to rock mounds in place of grass berms. There was fear that Calgary's dry climate and heavy use by the children would turn any grass berms into dust. The park opened in the fall of 1987 to a celebration by the children with a parade, clowns, and balloons released into the sky to mark the occasion. The Flying Fox installed. Source: Briar Hill School, Calgary, Alberta. Photo: Merinda Conley. The workshop produced a clear set of directions for the playground designers. High on the wish list were benches for waiting and rocks for scrabbling over. Rock mounds. Photo: Merinda Conley.